think I'm finally organised. So hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Obsessive Maker podcast. My name is Sian and I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia, and I think this is episode 6. And about Monday, I think, so about 5-6 days ago, I posted a little short here asking some of you, well, any of you really, to submit some questions to me so that we could put together a Q&A. And thankfully, some of you responded and left some comments in that video. So I've got my iPad here so I can answer some questions. So that will be probably the bulk of today's podcast, but I do have some whips to show you and clearly a finished object, which I don't think I've shared on my podcast yet, but I have over on Instagram. So yeah, I think we'll just make it a casual one and we'll have a bit of a catch up. So as always, if you want to follow me, you can do so on Instagram as the Obsessive Maker, also on Ravelry, same name, and I've linked those in my profile here. Excuse me, my profile here on YouTube. And if you want to be notified when I next have a podcast, you can just click the subscribe and the thumbs up. And if you want notifications, go for it. But I personally don't have notifications turned on for many things because I just regularly check anyway. So I know when my favorite YouTubers have new videos. So yeah. So do what you want, but I'm glad you're here joining me in episode 6. So what has been going on? I have a few whips, as I mentioned. I don't have very many finished objects, so I will show you the one and only that I'm currently wearing. Last time we spoke, I was almost finished with this, the Tulip jumper by Melody Hoffman, who goes by the name of B Mandarins on Ravelry and Instagram, but I believe she's converting to a wild Posy. I'll need to double check that. But this, I will stand up. This is the Tulip jumper, the cropped version, and it is rather cropped for me. I know it will be wonderful to wear with skirts, and it's a simple raglan. It's quite a loose raglan, I think, for me, but it's comfortable. It seems to have a bit of a square neckline, perhaps more square than I had expected, but I haven't blocked this yet, so it'll probably all kind of shape up in the blocking. And I haven't blocked it just because it's been really wet weather here and kind of still cold, so I didn't want to be bothered with the hassle of waiting for it to dry and constantly moving it around to find a place for it to dry. So yeah, so this is squeaky chair. This is the Tulip jumper that I made with the undyed DK Merino yarn from Wild Earth Yarns in New Zealand, and I dyed it with some rich dye in the colour coral, and then I paired it with the Skein Yarn Papaya silk mohair, and Papaya is the colourway, and I just absolutely love the finished colour. It's beautiful. When I bought the silk mohair, I actually didn't have a project in mind, and I struggled for a while to find the right colour combination to kind of pair it with a base colour, and I couldn't really find anything that kind of, you know, had the same type of vibrancy as the mohair. So then I just I stumbled across the coral coloured rich dye in the local Spotlight here, and I was like, oh, genius, I'll get some of that. I'll do a little tester with my yarn, and can't remember where I put it now. I will have showed you on a previous episode, but basically I dyed up about 1,000 meters of the DK undyed, and I used probably about 900 meters to make this jumper, and this is the size 6 in the pattern. It's supposed to fit like a 48-inch bust, but I'm actually finding it a lot roomier than I expected it to be. And I think if I was to knit it again, I would probably go down a size and maybe adjust some of the raglan increases, because I just feel like at the moment, pre-blocking, that it's a little bit poofy just around the bust here, but again, could be all fixed with blocking. So yeah, so this is my finished object. The scalloped hem I thought would be very complicated, but I was actually surprised at how simple it was once you understand how short rows work. Now, I have done short rows quite a few times, but out of some of those times, I've actually done them incorrectly and have ended up with some unsightly holes in one or two of my jumpers, which I've gone back later and kind of fixed by just looping some yarn through and tying it on the inside. Which I know you're not supposed to do, but I'm not a perfectionist, so I don't really bother. I'm not a perfectionist. It doesn't really bother me if there's like knots on the inside or anything. So anyway, the short rows on this scalloped hem, I actually got right. I followed the instructions properly, and the finished product of the hem is really cute. And yeah, I'm actually quite impressed with it. Thankfully, it's holding its shape as well, the scallop shape, without it kind of curling up. I thought that it would really need some decent blocking to keep that shape, but I think the DK, the kind of the density of the DK weight yarn kind of gives the scallops some structure. If you had an area yarn that you used, perhaps you might get more, I guess, curling up of the hem. So for example, my ranunculus, it's in quite a lightweight airy yarn, and the hem itself, which is just a ribbed hem, just curls under all the time. But I think again, if I'd done it in a kind of like more dense, heavier weight yarn, it would be okay. So yes, the scalloped hem on this is great. I really like it. It's very cute. I haven't had the opportunity to wear it very much, but we'll see what happens. The weather's been all over the place. We've had some really cold days and really wet days, and then the odd like warm summery weather speckled in there just to kind of throw us off. So I guess we're kind of in spring, and you know, with global warming, this is the new reality. So yeah, but anyway, I'll get to wear it at some point, so I'm not too bothered. So my whips, I haven't been knitting as much, but I still have managed to cast on 2 extra projects. I did have one project that I've been slowly working on for my mum. I will give you a sneak peek because I haven't actually shown you before, because I know, Mum, you watch this. Hi, Mum. I don't want to give the gift away, so to speak, but I finally moved on to the second half of the project. The project is the Bennett sisters shawl, and I am using 3 different types of yarn with it. The pattern itself just suggests 1 base yarn, and then halfway through the project you add a mohair, so that it's like half warm and hairy and half just normal yarn. And the first half I knit out of hedgehog fibres skinny singles in the colorway Sage, and this is one end of it. It's just knit up in a garter stitch, which I'm going to be honest and say I found really boring. Like really boring. Yeah, I think it's taken me 2 months to get to the halfway stage of knitting this shawl. I originally chose the pattern because I thought, oh, it looks really simple and easy. Surely it should be quick to knit. But I think the lack of a kind of challenge, you know, to kind of challenge my my skills and my thinking, like the way I think about knitting, the lack of that has actually caused it just to be the most boring project ever. It's going to be lovely when it's finished, but garter stitch all the way. And then about a third of the way through, you start doing a mixture of stockinette and garter to create this geometric shape. So the shawl itself is a triangle, but at the lower point, with some stockinette stitch, you end up with almost like a, I guess like a diamond shape, and then the wings of the shawl are in garter stitch. So yeah, it's a very simple and very lovely looking shawl. And as I said, it'll probably be lovely when it's finished. It's just not the most interesting of projects. So I'm only now that I've got to the second half of the project starting to enjoy it, because I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So the second half of the shawl I've made out of this Life in the Long Grass, and this is a silk mohair. This one's from Little Woollie Makes, and this colorway I think is called Earthshine. It's a beautiful colorway. I really like that. I love the mix of the blues and greens with the more earthy tones. Yeah, lovely. So I really hope my mum enjoys that. I had hoped to get it to her by her birthday, but her birthday was a couple of weeks ago. So I think it's going to be a Christmas present instead. But we can't actually see each other at the moment anyway, because we're in lockdown. And yeah, so we had planned to go out to lunch for her birthday, but again, you know, lockdown, all those plans got postponed. It looks like it's going to be extended as well. And so yeah, it'll probably be a Christmas present. Oh, and here's the leftover of the Sage hedgehog fibres skinny singles. It's a really lovely colour. It's the first time I'd worked with skinny singles. I did find them a bit slippery on the needles that I'm using, so I'm using the Knit Pro Zings. And I do enjoy working with the Knit Pro Zings. I think I only have Knit Pro needles. But this is a 3.5 millimeter needle. But I think with the single, it's very slippery on the needles. But now that I have moved over to a high twist sock and the mohair, it's a little bit more grippy, which is great. So yeah, so that's that project. My everlasting work in progress. And another one I started is the Ghost Horses sweater. I thought it was a nice kind of transitional project because it's not using mohair, which is, you know, unbelievable for me, but is instead using a Merino Yak, and this is a superwash merino. They're both sport weight. This one's from Ocher Yarns and this one's from Skein Yarn in Australia. And together they are knitting up quite beautifully. Just trying to juggle everything without it falling on the floor and unraveling. They are working up quite beautifully, and it's a really low contrast color work. And I'm hoping that my tension is loose enough to end up without loads of puckers in the color work, so that it doesn't end up really tight. I'm quite a tight knitter anyway, and this has been an exercise in restraint, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I am really enjoying the challenge of doing some color work. It's beautiful. And yeah, so it's quite nice. It's different texture when you're not working with mohair. I know this sounds really strange because probably most people start knitting without mohair, but my very first project was with mohair. Well, proper project. I don't count the beanies and stuff I knitted in previous years, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I haven't made much progress in the last week or so because I've been working on my mum's shawl, and I also started a oh god, I'm all tangled. I'll have to sort that out later. I started another project. It's a summer tea version. I don't know why I'm saying version. It's a summer tea, and it's by Melody Hoffman as well. So the same designer that did this tulip jumper. And it's the wild Posy tee that she has just released on Ravelry. And it's really cute. It's the summer version of another winter pattern called the Wild Posy Jumper that she hasn't quite released yet. And I decided to use, again, skinny singles, but this Merino Linen yarn that I bought from Yarn by the Bay. It's an Etsy account who literally, I'm so sorry if you're watching, I completely forgotten your name, but the lovely woman who dyes this yarn literally lives about 10k from where I live. So she does some really beautiful colorways. This one is the Merino Linen in the colorway Gala, and it's just a gorgeous blush pink with lots of kind of like plant greens and yellows and browns. So it almost looks like you've pressed flowers, you know, between pages, and you know how it's just all the colors in nature. But this is how far I've got so far. I did progress further to about here, so about that much further, but I realized that I completely missed an increase round and it threw off my stitch count, and last night I had to pull it all back. So this is as far as I've got, but I'm enjoying that, and I think it will be a really lovely summer tea. It's meant to be knit up in a DK weight cotton, but I don't have any, and I wanted to use up some of my stash, and I've been trying to figure out what to use this, what pattern to use this lovely yarn on, and I figured, well, if I hold it double, it's pretty much DK weights, so yeah. So that's my whips. Oh, I do have another one that I haven't shown you. I kind of stalled on it because I got bored. I probably wouldn't take me long to finish it, but it's a Stockholm hat or Stockholm beanie by Petite Knit, and it's knitted up in an 8-ply or DK weight merino with a mohair. This is not a silk mohair, it's a nylon mohair by, oh gosh, I can't remember. It might be Malabrigo. I got it from Morris and Sons, the knitting and yarn shop in Melbourne, and it was so long ago, but yeah. Anyway, it's a different type of mohair, and it was the only one I could find at the time that would go well with a really dark navy blue. I'm not sure if you can see it in this light, but it kind of has hints of like petrol blue, navy blue, greens. It's a kind of mottled, kind of like a mottled color. It's really nice, and I should just finish this and get it done, but I'm at the point where you decrease to create the, well, I guess to create the crown shape, and I just kind of got bored and distracted by other projects. So, you know, we all have languishing works in progress, so, you know, it's not the end of the world. But these are the yarns I'm using. So that's the really dark navy merino, and that is the mohair. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. Well, I haven't been working on this, but the other 3 things I have actually been working on. So yeah, and I do have a few acquisitions as well. Now I actually ordered, well, some of these I ordered prior to when I filmed my big yarn haul video, and they arrived about a week or so later, and I couldn't wait to bring out my yarn haul video for these to arrive. So, you know, here we go, we have something to share today. So I did mention on Instagram on Friday, I think today's Sunday. Today's Sunday, so it was Friday, I mentioned that I received my Nutiden package. I ordered more Nutiden. I couldn't help it. There was a really lovely colorway in the order, and I did an unboxing, which I filmed as soon as I received the package. So I will share it at the end of this video. So I won't mention that yet, but you can kind of see a little bit of Nutiden here beside me. But what we're going to focus on right now is this. Isn't it beautiful and colorful? I mean, my goodness. Now, I ordered this from Little Woollie Makes, which is a local yarn store about 40 minutes from where I live. It's near where my mum and dad live. But they stock a really good selection of yarns and a lot of indie dyed yarns. And they recently stocked some of What Mustard Made, and just the most beautiful rainbow yarn. This one is a 4-ply BFL superwash, so I'm guessing that's blue-faced Leicester, and it's 100% BFL, so there's no nylon, but it is superwash, which, you know, I'm not fussed about superwash. Like, I prefer to knit with more kind of like woolly wools, but when you have a beautiful colorway, sometimes it just can't be helped. And not all indie dyers dye with woolly wools. Most tend to do superwash, which I can understand why, but yeah. So sometimes you've just got to make that sacrifice and buy the yarn, even though it's a superwash. So this is just absolutely glorious. So colorful, so vibrant. And I have visions of knitting something akin to a jumper by designer Pop Knit. And if you haven't heard of Pop Knit knitwear design, like knitting pattern designs, go check them out. She's a Danish, I think she's Danish, I'm pretty sure she's Danish, Danish designer, and she knits with the most glorious colorful yarns, usually a 4-ply held with mohair and a fingering, sorry, and she just has some really cool designs. So go check out Pop Knit, because once you're there, if you like bright colors like me, you'll fall in love and you'll want to make something. So I have 3 skeins of this, and I do have a plan to make something fun and spectacular, and probably use one of the Pop Knit patterns, but I haven't yet decided which one. Yeah, there's a few to choose from. And but not all of her patterns are in English. Some haven't been converted to English yet, but they will be, I'm sure. And at the moment, I'm thinking probably the formation sweater, or she's currently working on another pattern, which I think it's called the pistachio sweater. She's knitting it up in a really lovely kind of lilac purple color, and I think the mohair is almost like a pastel rainbow, and so when they're held together, it just really gives this lovely color effect. So go check them out, Pop Knit. So that's that. That's the plan for that anyway. And have any of you heard of, I'll show you this, Wishbone Yarn. Wishbone Yarn is an indie dyer based in, I think, South Africa, and the colors that she dyes, the colorways that she dyes, are really lovely, natural, like colors from nature. So her recent ones have been really kind of like earthy, kind of like browns and bronze and greens. And then she also did a blue range of Boro colors. And so I got some of these from that collection. And this one here, again, is a Merino Linen, so similar to the pink one I showed you earlier. It is a fingering, and it's 90% merino, 10% linen. And this base she calls Flax Flower, and this color is Boro Blue. And I'll unwrap that in a second. And this is the mohair version. So it's a little different, the mohair version. The mohair version has more kind of faded denim, aged denim kind of look to it. So if you know about Boro, it's the Japanese technique of mending with like denim and indigo dyed fabrics, and obviously hand stitching, and it's almost like a patchwork. So this is the mohair, and you'll notice that it has a mix of colors. So it does have that indigo color, but it also has the natural tones and slightly yellowy colors as well, patches through it. So it's really subtle, this one. So this is, it reminds me of like aged denim. And then this was supposed to be similar, but more of a tonal blue. So it's hard to see. Well, it's hard for me to see because I've got the sunlight from the window shining in my face. But here we go. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So yeah, I'm not sure yet what I'm going to use this for, but I'm sure inspiration will strike. So I got 3 skeins of this Merino Linen Flax Flower base, and then I got 2 skeins of the silk mohair, which I'm generally finding 2 skeins is enough. So for example, this tulip jumper in size 6 cropped version, I used 2 skeins exactly. The first skein that I started knitting with in the mohair, I'd actually used part of that skein to knit up some swatches. So unfortunately, finishing this off, I did have to break into a 3rd skein, but I literally mainly used, it was just for the cuffs, so it's about that much. So if I hadn't used part of the skein to knit up swatches, I probably would have got away with 2 skeins of mohair for something like this. So I am undecided, still undecided about this, but I have plenty of time. And if you look to the left of me, well, you're looking at me, so it'll be to the right, you'll notice some other blue yarn there, and that is the Nutiden that I recently purchased, and which I'm going to show you the unboxing of shortly. So there's a kind of a blue theme, apart from the rainbow, there's kind of a blue theme to my purchases recently. And yeah, so those are my acquisitions. And yeah, for now they're going to be put away after I look at them and play with them. But yeah, so pretty. Excuse me, very thirsty. Right, so I think it's about time we move on to the Q&A. Have no fear, I will show you the unboxing. So, my goodness, how many questions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 questions. So thank you so much to everyone who commented on my little prelude to episode 6 on YouTube and put forward a question for submission, and in no particular order, I'm going to start answering them. So the first question I have here is from Leah from Hide and Seek, and Leah asks me, do you have any summer knitting plans? At the moment, not really, not beyond what I've already shown you with the Wild Posy tee. There was something I spotted online the other day, and that was the pressed flower shawl, and it's completely taken over my mind. All I can do is think about it and that I want to knit it, and so I wouldn't necessarily call that a summer knit, but it might be something that I start in summer. I'm not quite sure yet. I would like to knit maybe another tee, but I've got to finish this Wild Posy tee first. I was thinking about perhaps doing a ranunculus, because I do love the pattern. It's so pretty. But yeah, I'm uncertain. If you have any suggestions, send them my way. I'm always open to suggestions. And there might be a design, a pattern that I haven't heard of yet. So yeah, please do. Something simple, but not too simple because I get bored easily. So yes, so second question from Jacqueline. So Jacqueline says, what are some of my favorite makes, sewing and or knitting, and what makes them a favorite for me? And she's got a second part of the question, but I'll answer the first part first. So some of my favorite makes, sewing or knitting. I think knitting, my favorite make and my most worn make has to be my Unicorn Wednesday sweater. I have worn it so much during winter. It's the first thing I reach for when it's a cold morning and it's going to be a cold day. And I think that so far it is my favorite because I was so excited to knit it. It was at the beginning of my knitting journey, and I ordered the lovely Unicorn Party silk mohair from Suslerigate, and it was just, I think it was at the height of my excitement of starting to learn knitting. So I think that was my favorite. In terms of sewing, that's a tough one. What I have, I think I think the favorite thing I've made is probably my least worn item, and it was pre-COVID. I think it was 2019, and for the very first time ever I was going to be attending Melbourne Frocktails, and so I had to make a dress to wear to the Frocktails event. So I chose a really beautiful green tencel linen fabric which has a lovely drape to it, and it was kind of pricey, so it was a little bit of an investment. But I made the Vogue pattern, the deep V-neck Vogue dress that everyone was sewing. It's very well known. I can't remember the exact Vogue pattern number for it right now, but I will mention it below in the description. But everyone was making it. It is the most classically shaped dress. It is beautiful. It's got a grown-on sleeve and it's a deep V-neck, and then almost like I think it's like a four paneled kind of like A-line skirt, and it was midi length on me, and it was just really beautiful. Yeah, I really love that. And the surprising thing was I thought the dress would be really complicated or challenging to sew, but it was a really simple pattern, and I could just make some really I could focus on the details on it, such as, you know, making sure that the invisible zipper in the back was hand basted before I sewed it in. So I was able to really just focus on some proper finishing techniques, which perhaps I hadn't on other clothes that I'd made. And yeah, I think that's probably my favorite so far. And if I can find a photo, I might post it here so you can see as well. So they are my favorite makes, sewing and knitting wise. And the second part of your question was, what are the recommended essential tools to have for sewing? Well, obviously a sewing machine. And I can just say you don't need anything fancy. If you don't already have a sewing machine, the only thing I would recommend that you focus on when getting a sewing machine is make sure, if you're going to do buttonholes, that it does really good buttonholes. And whether that be a 4-step buttonhole or an automatic buttonhole, make sure it's able to handle the buttonholes properly. other than that, you don't need a fancy machine. A machine that does a straight stitch and a zigzag stitch, they're pretty much the only things I use my machine for. So straight stitch, zigzag stitch, and buttonholes. I have loads of other stitches on my machine that I do not use at all. So yeah, if you're interested, I have a Singer Starlet 680. It's a kind of low range, I guess an entry level sewing machine, and I bought it at Spotlight when it was on 40% off. So generally they're about, that one I think was usually about $599. Thankfully it was 40% off, so I got it for myself for my birthday about 3-4 years ago, and yeah, it's lasted a long time. I don't see myself replacing it anytime soon, and eventually when it does die, I will probably get, I don't know, maybe an older machine, a secondhand one that does really good buttonholes. So that is my essential tool for sewing. But other than that, things I really find handy is having a surface to actually cut my pattern pieces out on. So if you're working on a pair of pants or a dress, anything that kind of has big pattern pieces, you need a surface big enough to be able to cut out the pattern pieces on. So whether you use scissors or a rotary cutter, it's totally, you know, it's whatever you want to use to cut out your pieces. Having a surface to cut them on is like, it's valuable real estate. So I have a self-healing cutting mat and I move it around. It's sometimes I use it on my ironing board, so I have at least the length there to lay out my cutting mat on, and then I can put my pieces on there. But I do also have a surface that I procure in the hallway, and so honestly, I would love to have just a dedicated cutting table, but it's not a reality for a lot of people. So really just being able to have a surface you can access occasionally to cut out your pattern pieces is an essential. The last thing you really want to be doing, especially if you're my age or older, or if you've got a sore back or whatever, is sitting on the floor and cutting out your pattern pieces there. So that's an essential. A self-healing cutting mat actually is an essential for me. I have one that's A3 size. A3? Yeah, probably slightly bigger than A3 size. I use a rotary cutter, but I also have some scissors, and again, they're nothing fancy. I bought them over at Spotlight. So yeah, they're really just the essentials. You don't need much to start sewing. The tools that are real treats for me are a buttonhole gauge. And a buttonhole gauge is one of those kind of like expandy things that helps you measure, well, not really measure, but helps you mark out evenly spaced buttonholes on your garment. That's a really good tool. Another excellent tool to have if you're working on buttonholes, and yeah, this seems to be the theme, is buttonholes. But buttonholes are challenging, you know, and you can really mess it up. If you don't have the right tool to cut your buttonhole, you could cut through your buttonhole that you've just stitched and was a hassle to stitch and ruin the whole garment. So really, I guess if you're knitting things with buttons, these are essential items. Buttonhole gauge, a buttonhole chisel. It's this tiny little 12mm chisel, super sharp, that you literally press into your buttonhole to cut it open. And you never mess it up. It's awesome. I really like it. And yeah, those two things. I'm going to move on because I could keep talking about this forever. So the next question is from A. Perrin, and the question is, you have said that you sometimes work from home, or that you work and you sometimes work from home during lockdown, but do you work full-time, part-time, shift work? And when do you normally make time to craft or make in the day? So do I schedule a time? And obviously, A. Perrin, you said you need time. and you wonder how you can make the hobby happen with your commitments. So, long story short, I have a lot of time on my hands because I don't have a lot of commitments. I do work. I work full time. I have a full-time job, so I work my 40 hours a week, like any other normal person, but we don't have kids, so I don't have any obligations there, which is great. So my time is my time, and yeah, I can do what I want with it. So I can understand that if you have children or you have family that depend on you, it would be very challenging to find time to be creative. But for me, even when I'm really busy, I try and make a little bit of time if I have the mental capacity to. So I find half an hour maybe. So sometimes maybe I've gotten going really early in the morning and I find that I'm ready to start my workday half an hour than I need to, then I can actually just sit down at my desk, which is my desk. I convert it from my workspace to my sewing space. So I can easily just push aside my work stuff, pull out my sewing machine and do half an hour of sewing before I have to slide that back and pull out my work stuff. So yeah, so the other morning I was all ready to go. I did half an hour of sewing before I had to start my work day. And then at the end of my work day, I mean, it's very easy to knit in front of the TV at night. So I don't really have a problem with it. When I was commuting to work, so pre-COVID lockdowns, I would struggle to find the energy to do it. So I would really just find time on the weekends to do some sewing. And I probably would spend maybe 6 hours on a weekend sewing. But if you can only do little bits, do little bits. The great thing about knitting is you can pick it up and put it down. Sewing is a little bit more complex because you have your tools, you have a sewing machine, you need an iron sometimes, or an overlocker and an ironing board. So there are things you have to pull out and perhaps put away. But if you have a dedicated space, it saves you time pulling it out and putting it back. So just find half an hour, when you can, and don't put pressure on yourself because then it sucks the joy out of it. So yeah, so that's just when I find time. Some days I don't feel like doing anything, but I really enjoy it. So I make the time to do it. And sometimes that comes at the sacrifice of going for a walk. So yeah, but you make the choices. As long as you enjoy it, it's fine. And you'll find the time when the time is right. So yeah, you'll be able to do it. So my next question is from Catherine. Catherine, you're very generous. You said, I seem to be an accomplished master sewist with many years of making. What made me take up knitting? You were very generous there. I am by no means accomplished or a master sewist. I just enjoy it. But thank you very much. Ego boost. So what made me take up knitting? I think I was just bored. No, it's just a combination of things. I was feeling a bit stuck with sewing. Like there was really no point really in sewing any more clothes just because we were in and out of lockdown. We weren't going anywhere. There was nothing really to get dressed for. And I was also it was around Christmas time. So it's hard for me to get into the festive spirit here in Australia. I grew up here. We have Christmas here every year. But when I lived in England, it was just so different. Christmas was winter and cold and it was dark, but there were loads of Christmas lights everywhere. And so Christmas here just doesn't seem like Christmas after you've experienced Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere where it's winter. So yeah, it was around Christmas time last year. I was really missing friends and family in the UK and excuse me. And I was watching all of you on social media knitting all of your amazing things, and I'd kind of put it on my to-do list to learn. And I figured, there's not much we can do. We're in and out of lockdown. Why don't I learn to knit? And I started following loads of knitters on Instagram. I started watching some podcasts. Even though I'd signed up to Ravelry a few years prior, I actually got on and started having a look at patterns and getting to know the platform. and I was just watching all of these lovely Instagram stories and videos of people getting cozy and festive, and it really just fueled my need to knit over that period, and that's really what got me knitting. But I had admired in the years prior to that, I had admired quite a few people's knitting knits and knits that their mum had made them, and I always thought to myself, it's so cool. Like I could never spend that much time and energy like making one thing, and I have known nothing about knitting, and it had kind of been in the back of my mind, so I put it on my list to learn, and so that seemed as good a time as any. So that's how I got into the festive spirit, by learning to knit and watching lots of Christmas movies and knitting while I watched the Christmas movies. And yeah, that was how I got into it, really. So yeah, properly anyway. Great. Next question. This one is from Dorrit, and Dorrit asked me, how do my garments stand up to wear and tear? Do I have any tips or ideas to make them last longer, and or advice on things that perhaps I'd never do again, including wrong yarn choices, etc. So, well, I haven't been knitting that long, so I guess the only things that really have seen some wear and tear are the Wednesday sweater that was really my second proper knit. And because I've worn it so frequently during winter, I have noticed it get some wear and tear. But I don't have anything really that's older than, what are we now, August, older than 8 or 9 months old. So we'll see how things stand up over time. But one thing I do is, after I wear my knits for the day, I take them off, I shake them out, and then I lightly fold them up, and I put them back in my wardrobe. So I don't leave them lying around in piles on the floor or crumpled up, because, well, I have once or twice, but I've always regretted it. So if I don't do that and I actually fold them up and put them away, they seem to hold their shape better and last longer. And I don't know anyone who hangs their knits on coat hangers, but I can't imagine doing that, because I just would be horrified if they stretched out. So I do just lightly fold them. I put them in a crate on my wardrobe, walk-in wardrobe top shelf, and that's how I take care of them. I haven't had to wash any of my knits more than their initial first wash and block. Obviously I haven't washed and blocked this or my ranunculus yet, but I do plan to do some washing over summer so that they have time to dry. It'll be a lot quicker at drying them out then, but they don't smell or anything. So I don't know whether it's because I'm not really using superwash yarn. Maybe this is something you can tell me. With jumpers, with sweaters, obviously they're quite close to the skin. Do you find that your jumpers start to smell under the arms after a while? I haven't experienced that, and I think it might be because I'm not using superwash yarn. So it's woolly wool, it's untreated, and so there's probably still some like natural lanolin left in there, and I understand that wool has its own natural kind of cleaning properties, so it kind of is self-cleaning. I wonder, does superwash yarn have the opposite effect? So if you use superwash yarn, do you notice that it gets smelly in the pits? Question for you. As for yarn choices, yes, I do have two of the sweaters that I've made. I wish I had chosen a different yarn. So the first one being the very first sweater I made, which is the novice sweater. I used the Rowan, what is it? The Rowan something. I have one here. Ta-da! Rowan Kid Classic. And initially the jumper was great. It held its shape. It was lovely and fluffy, but I've just noticed over time it started to get really saggy. So I think I chose the wrong yarn in hindsight. I think perhaps it should have been something a little thicker. I don't think this was lofty enough or thick enough to use for that particular pattern. But you live and learn. It was my first jumper. I knew nothing. I knew nothing at all, really, about knitting and about yarn choices at the time. Second one is a magnolia bloom sweater that I made. It's really heavy, and because of the weight of the yarn, it stretches and sags, and I really wish that I just bought the right yarn rather than just trying to cobble together what I already had to make the sweater. It's still lovely, but it is rather heavy, and I think it's unnecessarily heavy. Too heavy for the lace work to hold it up. So I'll still wear it. It'll get loads of wear. I might end up cropping it a little bit because it's a little bit long and it might take some of the weight out of it. But yeah, yarn choice is a big thing. And you have to get it right, don't you? I mean, most of the time you probably could get away with doing whatever you want, but yeah, that was probably a mistake. You know, delicate yoke, lacework yoke, heavy yarn, stretching out, makes total sense in hindsight. So yeah, that's probably what I would recommend, is to think twice about what yarn you choose if you're not using the recommended yarn. Let's see, next one. So next question is from Maker Moran, whose yarn I have bought and I've shown you in my yarn haul, and Sam from Maker Moran. So Sam says, my sewing is so polished. Sorry, she says, your sewing is so polished. When did you start sewing and how did you learn? Also, do you have any particular brand of patterns you prefer? So Sam, I started to learn to sew in 2015. So not that long ago. I had wanted to learn to make my own clothes for many years. And I used to do some hand sewing and stuff when we lived in the UK. I'd kind of like hack some old clothes I had and some op shop clothes and create, you know, different things. Nothing fancy, just, you know, something fun occasionally. But when we moved back to Australia, I was unemployed for a while, really struggling to find work, and I needed a hobby. We were living with my parents. Thanks, Mum and Dad. And they will attest to this, that my mum found a secondhand sewing machine at an op shop, and she asked me if I wanted it, and I said yes. Perfect opportunity. I have so much time on my hands. Let's learn to sew. So she took me to the op shop. We bought that thing for, I think it was $20 or $50 Australian, and plugged it in. It worked. It did a basic straight stitch and zigzag and a couple of other things I didn't bother figuring out. And I just started doing it. I read quite a few blogs on how to sew. There's so many resources out there on the internet, on YouTube, people's personal blogs where they teach you how to make things. I just started, and it was a bit of a learning curve. Again, like with knitting, you have to choose the right fabrics. You have to choose the right fabrics to sew with, and the right type of fabric for your project. So the right type of yarn for your project. I knew nothing about that then, but I just dived straight in, started trying things, and started out with a few free patterns from Pearl Soho. They have some, I think it's the Pearl Soho City shorts, and they're these cute little like running shorts. So I made a few pairs of those as pajama shorts, and they were a really good experience. So I just bought some cheap fabric from Spotlight, you know, just some cotton lawn or something. Made a few things, and then I started to discover indie pattern designers, because I'd looked at the big four, you know, like McCall's and Vogue and New Look and the other one, Simplicity. and I just found them a little bit intimidating. So I discovered some indie pattern designers, bought the odd pattern, tried sewing it. I made some terrible clothes to begin with, but I was so proud of them at the time. And I just progressed, you know, and there's just like simple things that you begin to learn, like the terminology, and simple techniques like understitching your facings on tops because it stops them from rolling out. Excuse me. And over the last, what are we in now? 2021. So over the last 5 years, I just started to learn to sew, and I went from wanting to constantly consume new patterns to wanting to focus on like finishing techniques and becoming more interested in like making underwear and swimsuits, to tailoring and working with denim, which you'd think would be easy, but it's hard. So I'm currently working on a denim jacket, and it's time consuming. But you know what? The one big thing I learned from sewing is the value of the clothes that we wear. And also, another big thing I learned is to make clothes that fit me. So, we consume so much fashion, and when you learn to sew, like when you learn to knit, you really do appreciate the time and effort that is invested into producing something. Not only that, but also the cost of the raw material or the cost of the yarn. And so you do start to understand just the value of the things that you consume. So I have slowly over the last 5 years, I guess, so I'm just looking at my denim jacket because it's making me think about it. Over the years, I've really come to value clothing. I actually consume less clothing, so I very rarely buy clothes anymore. I tend to wear what I've made, with the exception of jeans. I still haven't conquered jeans. So yeah. And you know what? All of those kind of debilitating, demoralizing experiences in dressing rooms, it's so nice to be able to make something that I know will fit me. Or even if I make it and it doesn't fit me, at least I know I have the capability to do it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got the fit wrong that time, but I know that if I do a few tweaks, when I make them next time, they'll fit. And there's no, body image issues anymore, really. I'm much more comfortable with who I am with my body now than I was 5 years ago or even 15 years ago. But that's a whole different discussion. So patterns, brands of patterns. So I talked about indie pattern designers, and I've used quite a few over the years. So there is a company called Seamwork magazine. It's a sewing magazine. You can subscribe. It's like $6 a month, and they release 2 patterns every month, and you get credits. So you get 2 credits per month for that $6, and each pattern is a credit's worth. I have been a Seamwork member almost since the beginning, because they produce some really simple patterns, and they're really, really for beginners, kind of beginner to intermediate. And I started sewing some of their garments because they were fairly simple, easy to follow. The fit was, they had a decent size range as well. And the denim jacket I'm sewing at the moment is a Seamwork pattern, and it's a Seamwork Audrey. But I am moving away from Seamwork now because I'm more capable, and a lot of their patterns now are similar to other indie designers that are out there as well. And I don't always enjoy the fit of the Seamwork patterns. So if you want to learn to sew, I can highly recommend Seamwork as a really good jumping off point. other indie designers, pattern designers are Paper Theory. Highly recommend Paper Theory. Paper Theory designed this beautiful jumpsuit. It's a wrap front jumpsuit, really simple V-neck, no sleeves to set in, really lovely. It's called the Zadie jumpsuit, and there's also quite a few other patterns that they made. So I recently made the Miller trousers by Paper Theory. Really lovely. Again, fantastic. So go check out Paper Theory. Really lovely patterns. Some really nice things there. Another company, I'm just trying to think about ones I've recently made. Munna and Broad. Munna and Broad is an indie pattern company that focus on fully inclusive size and measurements. So they they have a size range that is very inclusive. They also have a promise that if they don't have a size included in the range and you want to knit, if you want to sew that pattern, I understand that they will actually draft it to your size. I need to check on that though. But yes, very inclusive size range there. I've only made one Munna and Broad thing, and that's the Hewen shirt, which I wasn't 100% happy with just because of I had some gathering. It's a shirt, traditional shirt, but it's almost like an artist's smock. So it has a mandarin collar and lots of gathering here, but I didn't quite like that. So I'm going to fix it a little bit. Still haven't got around to it though. But yeah, Munna and Broad. So I've said, sorry, Paper Theory, Munna and Broad, Seamwork Magazine, Closet Core Patterns. They used to be called Closet Case Patterns, but they're called Closet Core now. And also, I've recently gone to town on buying Helen's Closet patterns. So Helen's Closet has some really lovely patterns. If you haven't heard of them, the Winslow culottes were her very first pattern. They're just so simple. I bought the pattern, I'm like, damn, I didn't need to buy that. If only I'd known what it, like the shape of the pattern piece looked like, I could have drafted it myself. But it's simple but effective, and I've heard excellent things about all of her patterns. So I recently purchased 3 of them in a sale. So yeah, can highly recommend those so far. There's so many more out there though. I've just gone blank, but I'll list a few in the description as well. If I haven't mentioned them here, I will list a few more. So we'll come to that. Next question is from Emma. So Emma, it sounds like you're the same size as me in knitting patterns. So you said you're about a 2XL, which I am too. And you often have trouble visualizing how patterns are going to look in with the recommended ease on your body when the pictures of the pattern are usually in a small to medium size. I completely understand. I have the same problem, and it's the same with sewing patterns. A lot of them tend to be the smaller size range with the models. It's very off-putting. So I do have that problem. And you've asked if I have any tips for visualizing how they'll look on my body. So yeah, like you, Emma, I do trawl through the Ravelry completed projects for that pattern. I also, because I sew, I also have a very, I have a very good habit, I should say. I have a habit of sketching out the things I want to make. And sketching them out with hopefully what I think is my body shape when I sketch them. So it can be very difficult, I completely understand, to try and visualize it. And I have found it challenging with knitwear, which is why my first few sweaters were quite oversized. So I'm learning. And when the pattern talks about, when it gives you like the finished garment measurements, or it tells you that this size is drafted for this bust. Let's just talk about bust range. I know generally that I only want about 2 inches ease in a bust. And that's with, 2 to 3 inches ease in a bust with a garment that doesn't stretch. So most of what I sew is non-stretch fabric. So when I first started to knit, I didn't even think about that. I just converted my, what am I trying to say? I'm gonna have to pause this, collect my thoughts and come back to it. When I first started knitting, I didn't really even think properly about fit. I was just going off my measurements and comparing that to the recommended size for the bust measurements. It was only as I got into it and started realizing that I was knitting things too big that I actually began to think about my preferred ease. And although as a larger person, I kind of, I'm not saying this about everyone, but I have a tendency to want to cover things up, right? And I always think, oh, well, if it's too tight fitting, it's going to show off things that I don't really want to show off. So I err on the size of too much ease. I'm learning not to do that anymore. So my only way really of figuring out how, or visualizing how things look on me or someone of my shape and size is, again, as you have Emma, trawling through the photos on Ravelry. I also check the hashtags on Instagram. I do a little sleuthing. If I find someone that I think looks like me in my shape and size and my bust size, then I try and check their description on their Instagram post or in their Ravelry thing to see which size they made. And yeah, that's basically all I do. But I do actually draw things. I like to sketch things out and figure out if it will actually suit me. So it's not necessarily about choosing the right size when I sketch things out. It's figuring out if it will suit me and suit my shape. So as an example, this here is a blouse that I saw a blouse similar to this on a really skinny model in a magazine. And I was like, that's really beautiful. I want to try and recreate it. Will it suit my shape? So I sketched it out. I know this isn't an accurate representation of my body shape, but it helped me to visualize how it would look on me. Excuse me. So yeah, just by sketching it out, it just helps me, I guess, process whether or not I think the thing would suit me. God, that took a long time for me to get to the point, but I'll show you my other sketches, kind of. So I sketch out what I want to sew or what I want to knit, and I kind of give it a rounder bust or a shorter waist or bigger hips, and I see if it, it feels right. Yeah, I haven't really done that recently properly, but you get what I mean. Let's see if I can find another one. Okay, here's another one. I was thinking about sewing up a little dress like that, and that again has kind of helped me figure out if that style of dress would suit me. I decided no, it wouldn't, so I never made it, but sketching it out really helped to clarify things. So I guess I'm saying that if seeing what other people make doesn't help me decide that something would fit or suit me right, then I just work through it visually, like by sketching it out. I found it. Okay. This is something I want to sew. This is the Tudor blouse pattern, and this is just a skirt, a simple like rectangular skirt that I'll be making at some point. I've kind of given it a shape similar to my body type. And again, I have drafted up some Winslow culottes. So this is the Helen's patterns, Helen's Closet Winslow culotte. And I've given it hips, I've given it slightly shorter waist and a cropped length leg. And that has helped me figure out that yes, I do want to make it. So I had this idea in my head that outfit would look cute. Would it suit me? Let's draw it up. Yeah, I think so. That was very long-winded. So thank you for bearing with me. Final question. And this is from Sandy. And Sandy, let's see. So Sandy, thank you. She found my reviews of yarns purchased from Aussie suppliers very beneficial. And with regard to purchasing fabrics online, so fabrics, not yarn, do I have any favorite suppliers or websites for interesting fabric? You know what? It really depends on what you're looking for. So the fabric store online, they are an excellent one to go to. They have a really good wide selection of fabrics. If you love linen, go to the fabric store online. If you want something a little bit more bold and exciting, check out Ellie Whitaker. She's a I guess a surface designer, pattern surface designer. So she designs her own fabrics. She also now produces her own fabrics and sells those. And then there's also Nerida Hansen. And Nerida Hansen is almost like she's a fabric store, but she highlights multiple different Australian designers, and not always Australian, but it's usually bold, fun prints, and usually in a cotton linen blend fabric or a cotton or does she do swim? No, Ellie Whitaker does swim. So yeah, so they're the really bright and bold ones. My staple go-to place for swimwear and lingerie fabrics is Pitt Trading. Also, the Remnant Warehouse usually have a really good selection of swimwear fabrics and swim lining fabrics. And who else have I ordered from? Oh, if you want to sew bras and lingerie, Booby Traps have all of the technical fabrics such as power net, such as bra cup lining, all your hooks and sliders for bras. So, you know, there's lots of different places you can get stuff, but Booby Traps, I mean, they specialize in underwear and lingerie making, so they have all of the supplies. And I'm trying to think, finally it is happening. Other places I get fabric. So I used to walk past Tessuti Fabrics in Melbourne pretty much every day on my way home from work. I got to know the girls at Tessuti. They're really, really lovely. And they, you know, because they're so welcoming, of course, you want to go in, have a look. And generally Tessuti can be a little bit pricey, but it does have some very high quality, like Italian silks and coatings and, you know, boiled wools. But they also have a remnant table, and I've purchased quite a few things off their remnant table because their remnants are usually really decent size. So if you walk past there every day and you check the remnant table every day, you can generally find some good stuff. So yeah, I got quite a few things from there. Oh, one final one, sorry. Draper's Fabrics. Not the greatest, not the biggest selection of fabrics, but if you're looking for something specific, it's worth checking them out. I got some lovely Japanese selvage denim from them. And also, what else did I get? I got some boiled wool from them as well. So yeah, they're the ones that come to mind right now. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Yeah, well, I think that's every question. I'm just going to do a double check. Yes, that is every question. And I want to thank you all so much for commenting, giving me those questions to answer. Hopefully I've answered them thoroughly enough for you, and I haven't rambled on too much. Fingers crossed. But that really brings us to the end of today's episode. I feel like it's been a really long episode, so I hope you're still with me. If you are still with me, I'm about to reward you with the unboxing of my Nutiden order. And the Nutiden order is probably, this is coming out a little bit late for you to get in on this August collection, but you know, there's still the next collection coming, and my unboxing has a little sneak peek at one of their colorways for the next collection. So I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer your questions, and hopefully I'll see you again next time. In the meantime, keep well, keep safe, and enjoy whatever you're working on. Bye. Hi, my Nutiden package just arrived, so I wanted to see if you'd like to join me in unboxing it. So, just rip it open. I like to keep the brown bags because I use them as recycling bags. Ooh, this must be my lucky charm bag. And sneak preview. I'm very excited about that one. So I ordered 500 grams of the Val color. And I got one of their Lucky Charm bags as well. Let's see. I think there's about 5 plates in there, but it's 500 grams plus worth. Check this out. Lovely. Blue. You can't go wrong with blue. Now, it's a sneak preview of the next colorway. I'm very excited about that. Oh, so tempting. Right, let's open the Lucky Charms. Looks like they are Lucky Charms from the last collection, so the June one. So ooh, and this collection as well with a color change. I think this one is the sold out raw. I think I'm saying that wrong. Some Lugnet and Shushbenaya. Some more June. Some more June. And I think this might be a color change from June to August. So yeah, exciting. Lots of neutrals. So yeah, pretty happy with that. I mean, there's a ton of the Lucky Charms in that 250 gram bag, so certainly gives you lots to work with. But very excited about this, and very excited about the next collection as well. Thanks for joining me.